Welcome to Salsidoparanormal. I'm your host, James Salcido, and tonight I'm sharing experiences, true paranormal stories from the web. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media, ways to listen, and ways to support the show at the website, and that is salsidoparanormal.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.com. There are many ways to support the show. You can always share the show with others and rate and review it on your favorite podcast platform. You can sign up for the Patreon page, the Patreon feed, and get all the extra content there for as little as $1 a month. And also, you can check out the merchandise store and get all kinds of shirts and other items there, um, and with various designs made by friends of the show. And part of those proceeds do go to me. Uh, Support is never expected, but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making these shows. And also, please follow friends of the show and their own projects. That would be Jen, the Arcane Observer, who has her own channel and is the co-host of the show on Saturdays whenever possible. And Michael Strange of Trouble Minds Radio and the Trouble Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting, where you can hear all kinds of amazing shows, as well as my own online 24/7 for free. So thank you all for being here. I see you all there in the chat, and it's going to be another hour-long experiences show here, hour and usually a little more than that. Um, and yeah, looking forward to this. Have some special plans for the last few days of Halloween weekend, that time frame, and there'll be more of these kinds of shows. At least one, probably. Um, Actually, at least two, and possibly three, to round out the last of the rest of the shows for October, and then November 1st. So, and then we'll see. I might take a break. I might take a week off. But anyway, thank you all for listening in, and let me get to these true stories here. So, let's see. This first one says, "My mother's family tells this story at every gathering. With 6 siblings, I've heard it from nearly all of them. Each version was the same, each one chilling. When my mom was young, they lived on an isolated farm with my grandmother. The nearest neighbor was a mile away. The house sat 150 meters back from the highway, connected only by a dark patchy driveway. My grandmother would leave at dawn to work at the farm and sell produce, returning most nights at around 6 p.m. on the evening bus. My Aunt Anna, the eldest, was only 12, far too young to watch 5 siblings alone, but those were brutal times. My grandmother did what she had to do to feed her children. They had a routine. When Grandma came home, she'd call out from the highway for help carrying the groceries. The children would race down the driveway because she always brought them snacks. One evening, around 6 p.m., they heard her voice clearly, echoing from a familiar distance. "Come out and help me with my stuff." 4 of them rushed outside, my mother included. They thought it was odd they hadn't heard the bus but dismissed it. The driveway had no lights. When they reached the highway, no one was there. The aunt felt a sudden chill and ordered everyone back inside. That's when they realized something. They had all heard it, my grandmother's exact voice, her usual words, at her usual time. Some began to cry. Others prayed after locking the doors and windows. No one slept that night. The next morning, my grandmother returned early. She'd missed the last bus and had to stay in town overnight. So who called them out into the darkness? And that's where that one ends. That is that is fascinating. There's so many accounts of similar things. There's a word for it, but also the idea of the forerunner or the um, hearing something before it actually happens, or when it usually happens is a separate thing as well. Um, I wonder if it was some kind of residual or time anomaly uh, that caused that same sound, especially if it happened every day. I can imagine that happening. Uh, so I don't know, but I don't blame the kids, especially since they're all kids, for being freaked out by that. But I wonder if it was some kind of either time anomaly or residual, just because that's what the grandmother used to do every day. So, or at least I'm guessing every weekday, but I mean maybe 6 days a week. I'm not sure, but yeah, that's a fascinating one, and especially since um, I mean there was 6 witnesses to that, so at least 4 anyway that saw that she wasn't there. This next one says, "I've never believed in ghosts or anything paranormal. Honestly, I've never even had a strange experience before, but this one really shook me. I'm a 29-year-old male from the UK. My wife and I both traveled from the UK, stayed in an old Airbnb in Canada last week. The first night was fine, nothing out of the ordinary. But when I woke up the next morning, I had this overwhelming, almost sickening feeling that something had been in the house. The word that hit me straight away was goblin. I don't know why. I wasn't dreaming about it. Excuse me. Nothing like that. It just came into my head with so much force, it freaked me out. In my mind, I could actually picture it. Small, hunched, long fingers, big eyes. I could see it wandering through the basement, slipping into closets, like it was just watching us sleep. I had no evidence of it, but my intuition, or sixth sense, was screaming. I've had bad dreams in the past, but this was so real, I just cannot put it into words. I wasn't drinking and I wasn't feeling unwell. The feeling was just so strange that it was literally the first thing I thought of. I told my wife, and she laughed it off, but I can't shake it. Days later, I still get chills thinking about it. I've never felt anything like this before in my life. Has anyone else had anything similar happen to them? Any ideas what could have happened? And that's where that one ends. Um, I get the feeling that the person had there, that this sort of clear, I don't know, feeling of what had happened or what was happening. Um, I really am. It's amazing that there was no other evidence, but also it sounds like maybe there was some telepathic contact. I wonder if the whatever that was, whether it was a goblin or not, um, sort of made contact with the writer there. Maybe even while he was sleeping, or if the writer somehow had I don't know, had a sense of it because they were sleeping and they were more it was easy to pick up on things like that around them. But it is odd. But I've had experiences before. I've told this one before excuse me. Um, this one time where I just knew that there was something that was happening. It wasn't something that had happened. It was something that was happening. And this was, I don't know, a few years ago, maybe a little more than that, maybe 6, 7 years ago. Time is weird, and I'm terrible at remembering when these things happen. But I um I had lain down at night, in the early morning, and I was trying to sleep, and I couldn't sleep, and I was getting this feeling like I needed to turn off my computer. No, I'm sorry, I wasn't laying down yet. I'm thinking about something else. Um, I'm thinking about after is what I did. But I was sitting here and I was getting this feeling like I needed to turn off my computer and my modem or my internet connection. I felt like something was coming, and it was coming through the wires, I guess is the best way to describe it, but basically through the electronics. And I kept getting this feeling, and it would not go away, and it just kept on hitting me and getting stronger. And so eventually I did it. I turned everything off, and I laid down. And even as I was laying there, I got this feeling like of anger and of frustration that I had turned off all my devices. And then it faded, and I fell asleep. And of course, the next day I was able to turn everything back on again, and it was fine. But other than that, I mean, there was no visual anomalies around me. There was no sounds. There was just this feeling. So, as someone who's had something possibly similar to what the writer explained there, I can't just write them off with what they're saying. So that's really a fascinating account there. And yeah, I wonder about the history of the location, obviously, but you never know. Moving on to the next one here in a moment, but yeah, that one, of course, a lot of these posts that people put online, they don't give actual locations for privacy reasons and all that. Um, so, oh yeah, my experience had Dawn in the chat. Hello, Dawn. Hello, everyone. Mike and Sweets. Um, Dawn in the chat says reminds me of the movie Pulse. I can't remember if I saw that or not, but I know I've heard about it. But yeah, it was odd. It was an odd experience to have. Let's see here. This one says, for context, maybe just over 10 years ago, my grandparents moved into the house they are in now. I want to give some background to this house. It initially was three houses built in 1602. Wow. But one burned down. Then the houses had been moved, had to be moved to build an airport, so they moved them to where they are now and converted them into one house, still using the original materials, the wooden beams and doors. Now back to my story. The house has two staircases on either side of the house, which lead upstairs from two different angles. My grandparents' room was on the left. It leads to a small hallway to their bathroom. On the right, there is another bedroom connected to theirs with a door that then leads to a hallway with another bedroom. The layout is kind of weird, I know. There are wardrobes on either side of the room near the doors, and when I was younger, I was sat on the floor at the bottom of the bed, uh, playing with my playing with my back facing the door that leads to the bedroom, the door on the right, and the door on the left, which is the one that leads to the hallway and the bathroom. Uh, it was in front of me. Sorry. There we go. I was just playing. I would always be at my grandparents', no matter what. I loved being with them. My grandma went into her bathroom to get ready to take me out. When I was playing, I heard the door latch behind me open. It's an old-fashioned latch that can't just lift on its own, like the proper old English metal latches. So I turned around, and what did I see? A man wearing a brownish suit type clothing that stood half excuse me, half in the wardrobe looking at me. It almost blurred, like it wasn't a perfect picture of a person. It's almost like the outline of them was a bit blurred, if you know what I mean. Anyway, I freaked out and ran, and I didn't stay at my grandparents' house for like 7 years after that. More recently, I was looking for something in this spare bedroom that I'm sorry, living room that they have that is directly under their bedroom, and I found a picture of a man wearing the same clothes as the guy I saw. That man was my grandma's dad, who died when she was only 11. And that's where that one ends. Um, again, you have, excuse me, apparitions of relatives that the person didn't even know about, which I always find fascinating. I do wonder um, if these spirits realize that they're being seen until the um, the witness freaks out, or if they are just hoping that they'll be able to get across or get some kind of feeling or sense. Sometimes they are able to sort of project a positive energy toward whoever they're appearing to, and it works out okay. Other times, like this one, not so much. Um, I don't know how that works, but I've heard both versions of that from different accounts where um, people have witnessed relatives not knowing they're relatives until after the fact, and having that happen. So, um, moving on to the next one here. This one says, I'm not sure if this fits here, but I just want to get this out of my system and share. So I'm going to start by describing a bracelet. I don't think I can add a picture of it here, but I'm going to try to describe it as much as possible. So the bracelet is a cuff, and it is silver, and it has the words "she is" and "free" at the very center of it. So basically, she is free. I got this at a women's conference, and there were no other engravings on the inside of the band. I believed I had lost this bracelet at um, at some point in February of this year. I got it at this women's conference in late January. I found the bracelet recently in a car that I don't drive. I'm currently restoring this car. I didn't take it to the women's conference. The car, they mean. When I got the bracelet back, it had my nickname on one side of the band, and opposite of that, it had a date, February 17, with no year engraved on it. That date is not particularly significant to me, but I have always liked the number 17, and I have always felt a strong connection to February. Again, I'm not really sure. Just needed to just needed to talk about this, and that's where that one ends. So it sounds like they lost the bracelet, and either it was altered and returned, which is fascinating, or a similar one was returned. I do wonder. I don't know if that could be some kind of. Now I'm wondering. I think I mentioned this before too in previous shows. When objects vanish and reappear, or vanish and then other objects appear, are they transferring between different dimensions or universes. Um, was that some kind of a, again, could you classify that as a glitch in reality? I don't know, but it seems like it's possible. I wonder if in some other version of reality, the same person got this the bracelet that had didn't have the words "She is free" on it. Instead, it had the February 17 and the nickname on it. I wonder if, in other words, this person in universe A, let's say this universe, did lose the bracelet, whether it vanished or not, and then um, a version of that from another universe, B or C or whatever you want to call it, appeared here, and now they have that version. I don't know, but it's fascinating to think about those possibilities. Let's see here. Did I skip one? Nope, I did not. Okay. So, moving on to this one here. It says, these aren't particularly scary, but they alerted my creepy senses. Feel free to share your own creepy things your kids have said. And that's a post online. My 6-year-old and I were talking about different ways babies are born. Twins, uh, C-section, others. And he said he was born between two. He has no idea that I was pregnant once before and once after him. Lost both early. It kind of creeped me out. When he was around a year and a half old and only just speaking, a song came on the radio with gunshots in the background. He said, "Bang, bang, dead." We had never heard the song before, or any other song or TV show or video about guns or gunshots. He also talks a lot about his other mom and all her adventures. It could just be an imaginary friend type thing, but she comes up a lot. I wish I could remember what kids do. And that's where that one ends. I don't know. Based on the other things there, it doesn't sound like an imaginary friend to me. Sounds like they're remembering either past lives or a past life, um, and then being aware of things that happened just before and after they came to this life. That they are being able to know things that happen that they shouldn't necessarily know. Technically, is fascinating, and there are posts about that, and it's sort of it's not something that pops up all the time in when I'm looking for these accounts, but every once in a while something will, and so I want to share those because I think they're important to do that, to share those. Words are hard. Anyway, um, this one says, this morning at about 9:30, I was leaving my house to go to work. I was in my car, and at the end of the street, I stopped at the stop sign and let two people cross the road. It was an old man with bright white hair and a woman that was uh, up to the shoulder. They passed, and I turned in the opposite direction and uh, continued driving for about 5 blocks. On my left, the same couple was walking down the sidewalk. What the heck? That's where that one ends. And I've heard so many accounts like that and read so many accounts like that where people see the same people uh, in different places that physically it doesn't seem possible for them to have made it to the next point where they were seen, uh, where it was miles or at least a good amount of distance where they shouldn't have been able to run to get to that point if they wanted to. And so that's always fascinating to me because that's something I've found over and over the years here. Let's see here. This one says, My military unit was on temporary duty in Washington, D.C., and we stayed at a Hilton hotel while we were there. When we checked in, the woman at the front desk was looking at her computer and said, "Oh no, we aren't doing that." I asked her, "Not doing what?" She said, "I'm not putting you on that floor." So I had to ask why. She said that floor was haunted, and they did not usually put people on that floor. So she moved us to a different floor. I just shook it off and did not think much of it. The next day, I got up and went to take a shower. When I got out of the shower, the faucets on the sinks were running full blast, all four of them. I know I did not turn them on, and I was the only one in that hotel room. We all had separate rooms. The team met for breakfast, and I mentioned the weirdness that had taken place earlier. One of my team members looked at me, somewhat stunned, and she proceeded to tell us that she was awakened in the middle of the night when all the lights in her room came on all by themselves. The main lights, desk lamps, everything. We all got a little freaked out. I guess whatever was hunting the hunting the other floor, decided to come visit us. And that's where that one ends. Hotels. Every so often, I mean, on a fairly regular basis, I find a post about a hotel, and I think it's hilarious in a way. Not fun for the people that had the experiences, but hilarious that the person at at the hotel desk tried to move them away from the paranormal activity, and a couple of them still had weird things happen. That's kind of funny, but also I feel bad for the group because they weren't expecting that. Also, it's funny that they just thought nothing of it when or the writer they're not there thought nothing of it when it was mentioned. And so yeah, that's a fascinating one there, and I find that to be slightly slightly funny. Um, let's see here. Dawn in the chat says maybe front desk moved them to the wrong or to the haunted floor. Yeah, maybe she got the wrong one. I don't know. Maybe she had heard about the haunted floor and that she got the wrong information too. It's hard to say, but yeah, I think that was kind of. I mean, at least it wasn't anything too too bad. It was just weird things happening. But this one says, "I'm posting here because I've had some unsettling things happen in my home over the past month, and I'm not sure what to make of it. It started about a month ago. Around 3 a.m., I was suddenly awoken by a female voice softly saying hello, repeatedly in a questioning tone. My dog woke up at the same time and started barking and growling at the corner of the room, staring like he saw something. He's usually a very quiet, calm dog and rarely barks like that. Since then, my dog has been noticeably more jumpy and will stare intently at random spots in the house like he's watching something I can't see. About a week after the first incident, I woke up to find a half a glass of water sitting on my counter. I live alone, and it wasn't a glass I would normally drink from. Usually only drink water from a bottle. Then about 2 weeks later, I was sitting on my couch when my kitchen tap suddenly turned on by itself. It's the kind of tap you pull up to start running, so it's not something that can easily happen on its own. My dog started barking again at the same time. I'm not sure if these events are related or if there's some explanation I'm missing. Has anyone experienced anything similar? Could this be paranormal, or should I be looking for something else? And if it is something paranormal, what can I do about it? Any advice or insight would be really appreciated. And that's where that one ends. Uh, I don't know what to do about it, as I always say. I don't like giving advice in that on that side of things because nothing is ever perfect. What works for one person or any number of people at one time will not always work for everyone all the time. So I would say as long as those are the only things happening and it doesn't get any worse or maybe even better, it just stops, then I would say don't worry about it too much. Um, but yeah, it sounds like there's some kind of activity there. Um, I don't know what, but it doesn't sound like. It sounds like the place is somewhat, or at least was somewhat active. This next one says, let's find it again. There we go. Just the day before, one of my mother's brothers died. At night, my sister and I were in our room. We had the door locked because she was getting dressed, and I was just lying in bed, looking at my cell phone, waiting for her to finish so I could go out to the living room. Just when my sister finished dressing, I decided to turn to the other bed, and I suppose my sister did too. At that moment, we saw the silhouette or shadow of someone sitting there, and at the same time, the handle and plate of the door, or knob, I guess they mean, turned, releasing the lock. My sister and I turned to look at each other, and in one jump, I reached the door and ran out to tell my mother. My sister ran after me, and we didn't want to sleep in that room. The next afternoon, room, I was gonna say room, my uncle died, and I came to believe it was him saying goodbye. Could it really have been my uncle saying goodbye, or was it something else? And that's where that one ends. It could have been him. I don't know about necessarily saying goodbye. It's possible. But also it could just be he was thinking of the writer and their sister and that family, and came to visit and didn't even realize that he was going to be seen. Um, again, I've heard that when you are close to passing, sometimes your consciousness does go places outside of your body, um, travel around to visit family members here and there. So it's possible. Let's see here. Let's get on to the next one here. This one says, I would like to share this account from a friend. He used to work in a retail shop with 3 floors. Among the staff, it was common knowledge that a shape-shifting entity wandered around the 3rd floor. It often took on the form of employees who weren't actually there, fooling others into thinking it was them. One day, a newly hired supervisor was warned about the spirit. At first, he was intrigued, but eventually he had his own encounter. It happened late one night during closing. The entity had taken the form of an employee. According to him, he saw the figure just standing there, motionless, then slowly walking away to a certain direction. Then suddenly, that entity shoved a good ton of the office equipment stuff, which was on the desk, to the floor. The supervisor, already in a bad mood and trying to finish a report, knew something was off. The quotation marks employee quotation marks he saw was supposed to be on sick leave that day. Irritated and distracted, he finally snapped. He stood up from his desk, grabbed a thick record book, and hurled it directly at the shapeshifter, hitting it hard. Then he unleashed every curse word he could think of, shouting, "You picked the wrong time to mess with me." He wasn't afraid. He was done with it. He was ready to confront it and teach it a lesson, no matter what happened. As he advanced toward it, the figure began moving toward a corner and then vanished. Before leaving, the supervisor shouted another warning. If it tried anything like that again, he wouldn't hesitate to do whatever it took to get rid of it. After that night, the sightings stopped. No one reported seeing the shapeshifter again. The strange activity on the third floor simply stopped. Now, that got me wondering, have you ever encountered a similar situation, or do you know anyone who has encountered something similar and acted that way? And that's where that one ends. That is fascinating to me. For one thing, I'm always torn when I hear about sort of the reactions of people to these events because I you never know what you're dealing with, so I'm always hesitant to like I would never want to sort of give a warning like that to whatever is going on around me. But also, I don't blame that supervisor for getting so upset, especially if anything could have been broken from the office equipment, all those kinds of things. Um, it sounds like whether it was their voice or their words or their energy, it really drove off whatever this was. And I'm curious about that. What was that? Um, I've never really heard of, let's say, souls or ghosts or spirits of people being able to change shape like that. So that doesn't seem as likely to me, but I don't know for sure. But then, of course, the question is, what was that? Who was that? And that is fascinating that it just vanished. And then after that supervisor told it off and warned it um, to, that if it did it again, then the supervisor would do whatever they had to do to get rid of it. It did stop. I wonder if it left completely or if it just never did anything like that again, if it kind of realized um, that it wasn't okay to do that. I'm not sure. I have no idea, but that is a fascinating one. And I've every once in a while I have come across accounts like that where people they'll be pushed, not physically, but I mean they'll be pushed to sort of say that out loud to wherever they're at, whether it's their home or whatever, wherever they're at. They'll say knock it off, and then in some rare cases if you don't, then that, again, like the that supervisor said, I will do whatever I have to do to get you out of here. So and again, I don't think that probably works every time, but I don't blame that person for doing that either. So that's a fascinating one there. Makes me wonder if that whatever that shapeshifter was, if it moved on to somewhere else or not. I'm really curious about that. Um, let's see here. So moving on to the next one here. This one says, when my grandmother was young, she lived in a house said to be haunted. Strange things happened there, like lights turning on and off, and doors creaking open or shut on their own. Rumor had it that a previous owner had died inside the house, and his restless spirit remained. Basically, your typical ghost story. For the most part, the strange happenings could be easily explained away. However, one night my grandmother had an experience that no one could explain. Her bedroom connected to a small greenhouse, which then led outside. There were two doors, one from the bedroom into the greenhouse, and another from the greenhouse to the yard. Both were always locked. One winter night, my grandmother was home alone in bed. No matter how many blankets she pulled over herself, she couldn't get warm. She shivered the whole night to no avail. The next morning, when she rose, she was met with a sight that froze her blood more than the cold had. The bedroom, the bedroom door to the greenhouse stood wide open. Snowy footprints trailed from the greenhouse into her room, and yet the door from the greenhouse to the yard remained, or outside, remained firmly locked. She was obviously very upset. However, nothing was ever found that morning. There were no signs of an intruder, and no explanation for the footprints in the snow. Both doors had been locked tight, just as they always were, leaving no possible way for anyone to enter. To this day, the mystery has never been solved. Perhaps the house really was haunted. Excuse me, and that's where that one ends. Um, I'm guessing the grandmother's bed was not facing the door, so that's why they didn't notice that it was open. I don't know. That one is fascinating because, again, I've heard accounts of that, people finding footprints in snow that in some cases just start and stop. I've never really heard of that happening with a greenhouse connected to a home like that where they were found and yet there was a door locked between them and outside. So that's fascinating right there. Um, so yeah, that's. I wonder what was going on there. Could have been just someone passing by. It's hard to know. Moving to the next one here. This one says, I just opened the fridge, and as I was opening it, I asked my daughter about her schoolwork and took out a carton of pre-made iced coffee. I put the carton on the counter, and I refilled the glass cup I had been drinking from. I distinctly remember pouring it into the glass, the feeling of the cold liquid hitting the glass cup, and I put the iced coffee carton, I guess they mean, back in the fridge and closed it and headed to my room. I then did not have the cup in my hand and returned to it nearly empty by my bedside. Even my daughter remembers me refilling the cup, but there's no evidence it was ever refilled. And that's where that one ends. So it sounds like it vanished while she was turned away from the kitchen counter and reappeared on the bedroom in the bedroom afterward. I don't know, or something like that. Again, some kind of weird anomaly with time and or reality where that cup vanished. And I wonder if the cup she found was the one that was nearly empty in her bedroom. Um, the one basically that she was refilling. I'm curious about that, and I have no idea how that works. Let's see here. Moving through these pretty fast today. Just not bad. Um, this next one says, so I always remembered this thing I saw. And no, this is not some fake story for jokes or to get karma. And I mean, online, website, uh, voting, whatever you want to call it, thing. I was around 12 or 13 at the time. I used to share a room with my brother that was sort of like a bunk bed, but more like a do it yourself with a bed on two structures. and under the space is another bed. I was heading out of the bathroom next to my desk, and I saw some skinny looking version of my cat just staring at me, not moving, not doing anything, just looking at me. It was perched on my brother's bed frame, lurking over him. I couldn't see it, just its silhouette. This was before we got our two cats, so it had to be either a spirit or a cryptid or creature. I always randomly remember this, and all of it uh, comes back to me, like at least 3 times a year. And that's where that one ends. I don't know what they saw. It could have been a cryptid, could have been a creature, could have been a ghost cat. Um, and I say that because I had a ghost cat here that would stop by once in a while, and it was not a previously owned cat, as far as I can tell, of myself or of my family's. But it was here, and so it doesn't have to be. Ghost cats do not. Ghost animals, I guess technically, do not have to exist. They have to have existed as a pet before they can appear. It is not as common, I think, for that to happen, but it is possible. And for those that don't know, I could go over my ghost cat stories, or at least a couple of them, real quick. The things that happened the most around here would be I would hear one of the kitchen cabinet doors slightly open and then close, and sometimes it's Logan, my cat. But other times I would hear that sound and I would see Logan right by me, and it wouldn't be her. Um, but then there's also times where I've felt a cat walking around on the bed, but I never felt the cat get onto the bed or get off of the bed. It was just the feeling of it walking on the bed. And I'd always look and Logan would not be by me when that happened. Um, did the same thing on my a table I used to have, and a TV I still have but don't have it there anymore. It would walk around on the table behind that TV, so where I couldn't see it but I could hear it. Um, and then of course I did see it a couple times. Once in the middle of the day in the window next to my front door, and then once in a dream. So, um, so yeah, there are ghost cats out there that can appear, and doesn't matter if they belong to the person or not. So I think that's fascinating. um, I don't know how that works, but again, like I said, I've had experiences, and then every so often you find accounts like this where the person had an experience. So, yes, ghost cat. I do like that emote. And actually, funny enough, the ghost cat that I saw, it was an all white cat as well. Just looking at the chat here. And for anyone that hasn't joined the Discord, I recommend it because you get to sort of be interactive during these recordings and leave comments and that I can read on the show. And so, but anyway, moving on to the next one here. Let's see here. I'm gonna have a quick drink here. Hello, everyone there in chat. Thank you for being here. So, just finished talking about ghost cats, as I do on the podcast every so often. Moving on to this next one. This one says, I was in my bedroom petting my cat, funny, that's funny, while he was eating, like I usually do. I picked him up and rubbed his belly, and then my home smart device was, activated and said, You are a good person, and I am proud to be in your life. It was completely unprompted. Unfortunately, I do not save audio history for my home devices, so I can't go back and see what may have triggered it. It just lit up and spoke. Also, my home device is not part of a group, and I am the only one home. And my roommate wouldn't have my device on his phone. My mom passed a year ago, and I want to believe it's her. And that's where that one ends. Um, that's it. Could be. There have been other accounts I've shared in the show where after a loved one passed, there would be random activations of smart devices. Now I know they can be triggered by a lot of things, but also I don't think we should write off the possibility of spirits interacting with them. We already have so many accounts of spirits uh, and souls or consciousness of loved ones using other devices, phones, radios, even actual computers, um, to get messages across to individuals that I've shared in the show before. So now, granted, I don't really trust these devices, and I do think that they can be obviously they can be hacked and things can go wrong with them. Um, so it's hard to say what really happened there, but it is possible it was the individual that the writer thinks it was. Maybe their mom. I don't know. So, um, but thank you all for being here. I'm just looking at the chat here. I'm glad to see so many people. It's amazing. Thank you. Um, let's see here. So we'll do at least two more, and then we'll see where we're at for time. And then if there's time, then we'll do some more. If not, then we'll stop. That's how it goes. This next one says, "It's been a long time since this happened, but I still remember it clearly. I used to live in an old farmhouse in basically the middle of nowhere, and I believe it to be haunted. I have multiple witnesses, people in my family, friends, locals, and vets who came to the house from previous owners, who all also saw and heard strange and or unexplainable things. But those are completely different uh, stories. Two of my friends were staying over one night. A couple, I'll call it V and H. We had divided up the bedrooms like this. V was in my daughter's bedroom, on the end of the upstairs hall opposite the stairs. My daughter and I were in the master bedroom, and my two kids in two other kids, I guess I mean, in their own rooms. They were in cribs at the time, but are adults now. My husband and H were downstairs on the couch. They had fallen asleep earlier and were pretty much out for the night. That was the only night I ever closed every single bedroom door in the house. As I was lying in bed, I heard footsteps. My kids were either in cribs or with me, so I assumed it was one of the men. However, the footsteps started where V was sleeping, which should have been impossible. It was on the opposite end of the hall from the stairs, and I hadn't heard the bedroom door open. I listened quietly as the footsteps came toward my door, stopped, and went back to V's room or V's door. I didn't hear them again after that. Again, which should have been impossible. The next morning I asked V if she had heard them. She looked really shaken up and said that yes, she had heard them clearly and was terrified, just waiting for whatever it was to open the door. I never closed all the bedroom doors ever again, and I never heard the footsteps ever again. My best guess was that something was trying to get into a bedroom every night and was blocked that night. I have no idea what it is. And that's where that one ends, and that's fascinating to think about, because if that never happened before, that same exact thing never happened before, and it never happened again, they could be right about that. It could be that there's some presence there that would go into the rooms every night, whatever room it may be, or rooms it may have been, and they um, they were not able to that night for whatever reason. Again, it's odd because so often you hear about ghosts or spirits being able to go through solid objects, but then other times they don't. And again, I don't know how or why that works. But but they did say there were other experiences there. It sounds like a lot, um, from the way they talked in the beginning of that post. And but I don't know, but I like that idea that maybe it was because the doors were closed, and that's why there was this thing happening. The other possibility is, I don't know, some presence that wasn't happy that there were so many people in the house, possibly at the time, and it wasn't so much that the doors were closed that made it happen. It was more of a case of, I want to get the attention of the people that are here. Either way is possible. I'm just glad that nothing else happened at that point in time. Um, but I thought that was a fascinating one there, and the writer of that post having a good guess as to what was going on there. So let's see here. Move on to the next one. This one says, I live in a house that is haunted, or at least the property is, since this is a mobile home. So many times I've heard the random noises and seen the shadows. One time, my ghost did wake me up by screaming, "You've got to wake up now," when someone was breaking into my neighbor's car. So I've determined it's a good ghost. At very most mildly annoying when she riles up my cats. I grew up in a house with similar experiences, so I'm really not phased at all. It's all normal to me. But when I was dating my ex, it was all new to her. So naturally, it bothered her. There was a time one night while she was sleeping over when the ghost was getting extra loud, making thuds and walking heavily. So I went to check to be sure it wasn't an intruder, as anyone should, just in case. When I came back, I reassured my girlfriend that nobody was there, and it was probably just the ghost. Let's go back to bed. She immediately freaked out, asking how I could be so calm. I told her it was harmless, and besides, who do you prefer? An intruder? I'd rather see a ghost in my than a person in my house. If it's a person, I've got to do something about it. And that's the end of that one. I do like that one in a way. Just the reaction. What would you rather it be? But also, it is fascinating because it's it's tricky when you get used to having these experiences. It's and then you're with someone who's never had an experience. Um, it's those can be conversations that go in exactly the way it did, where the writer there was not phased at all, as they said, but at the time their partner there had never had an experience and was freaked out by it. Uh, so I've had people ask me before how I don't get freaked out by all the experiences I've had, and it's because I've had so many, and it's why That's why I don't get as freaked out. I've gotten used to just getting through all the experiences I have, just going by what I feel and how I feel about it, and and overall it's been okay. So let's see here. Let's see how many we have here. I'm not sure if this is a okay. So we'll do 4 more because I hate to stop right on the hour. Um, so let's go back to where I was. This one says, on this occasion, my older sister, my cousin, and I were at my paternal grandmother's house. We were locked in my grandmother's room, reading a diary of my grandmother's mother, where she tells of things that she saw were going to happen, visions of the future, so to speak. We were almost finishing reading the diary when the bathroom door opened. We literally saw the latch of the bathroom door turning little by little until the door opened completely. My sister, my cousin, and I looked at each other, but we didn't have any negative feelings. We took it as it was my great grandmother who was there while we were reading her diary. And that's where that one ends. That's fascinating. It could have been. It's possible, especially if nothing else ever happened before or after in that home. Uh, so I think that's interesting there. Not much else to say on that, but so moving on to the next one here. This one says, I had a really bad day at work the previous day, which is unusual. I came into work the next morning wearing a shirt I'd never worn before, set my things down, and sat at my desk for a while working. I got up to grab paper, and the security camera screen is right there. I literally saw the back and side of myself sitting at my desk. It looked just like me. Same hair color, cut, same shirt I had on, which I'd never been worn. I thought, oh, the cameras are off, and that's from earlier. I turned around to walk back to my desk. She, or me, was not there anymore, and I just had this feeling. So I turned around and looked and waved at the camera. No time lapse at all. It wasn't the camera being delayed. It was me seeing the back and side of me working at my desk, like always, but in the same exact outfit. Since then, I just don't feel quite right, like something is off. Has anyone else experienced this, or seen their doppelganger, or was it even that? Any insight is welcome, as this has absolutely blown my mind. And that's fascinating. This is not the first time I've come across posts about electronics showing what could be either the past or the future somehow. And there was even a true story I shared recently on one of my shows where it seemed like someone was getting a phone call from a different point in time in their office. Out of body experience, Don says in the chat. Maybe I don't know. If it is, it's amazing that it was picked up on the video. Um, but yeah, I'm not sure. It could be. Uh, but I always wonder about that. The device is picking up the different points in time accidentally due to whatever energy is going on around them. So, uh, yeah, doppelgangers are definitely real. And that stuff creeps me out. Chef Pete says, "Thank you for being here." And yeah, there's all kinds of things. The thing is, just similar to with ghosts or spirits, there's a lot of things, or well, just ghosts in general. It seems like there's a lot of things that could lead to an apparition or a ghost. Um, and I wonder if that's the same case with these images of people that already exist, but in a different place. I'm wondering if that's the case there, where yes, there are doppelgangers, yes, there are weird malfunctions or energy effects on devices to show um, different points in time, or to project to different points of time somehow. So, in other words, all these things are possible. Alternate parallel universes, all these things. So, um, so yeah, let me see here. Let me get down to the next one here. This next one says, okay, so I sew a lot, SEW, a lot. It's my thing. I use my sewing stuff almost daily. My tomato pincushion went missing. I blamed a cat and figured I'd find it eventually. Also, that may sound unfriendly to cats, but also cats do things. But anyway, a while later, I needed to pack for a trip. I needed to alter a dress on this trip, so I needed pins. I looked everywhere. No tomato pincushion. I bought new pins. Tonight, when I was looking in my suitcase for something, there was the darned pincushion. The suitcase was stored, closed, not cat accessible, so they say, and empty when I packed. This is wild. Also, the Matrix owes me for the new pins and pincushion I bought. That's where that one ends. And for anyone that doesn't isn't familiar with my own experiences, I had to throw in "so they say" because I've seen I've had experiences where it appeared as though Logan, my cat, teleported twice. So um, can't rule out a cat ever. And so Dawn in the chat says I always find stuff after I buy a new one. It is odd. The objects vanishing and appearing and all that is a fascinating thing. And again, I wonder, are there multiple causes for that? I'm guessing so. Um, but uh, but yeah, it's always fascinating when that happens. Not fun because you're losing things, but fascinating as well. Let's see here. So we'll do one more here, and then we'll stop for the night. And I think let me check on one other thing here real quick, because yeah, might as well. Okay. So let me scroll back here. This one says, this is a simple one, but an odd one. I had two pairs of thick winter weight socks and went to peg out my washing. The last four items were these four large green socks. I saw them in front of me. I selected two socks and pegged them as a pair. I went to get the second pair, and they were not there. Not on the floor, and they couldn't have blown away. It was a calm day. Simply vanished into thin air. Was it a glitch? Has the sock monster snuck up and eaten them? I searched the area and could not find them at all. One pair of socks down. At least it's a pair. One odd sock would be annoying. And that's where that one ends. I've heard of them vanishing in dryers, washers or dryers, but never vanishing uh, like that, like within moments after they were last seen. That's fascinating. Again, what is causing all these objects to vanish and or reappear and or objects to appear? Is it a consciousness or is it just, I don't know, the mechanics of reality somehow slipping or malfunctioning, or what is going on there? And I do wonder about that. Yeah, dryer black holes only take one of each. That's true. Don says that in the chat there. I've heard of that too. So it could be something else then. I don't know. Um, I'm looking here, and I would like to go on. So we'll do four more. I'm fine as long as I don't go like over uh, over an hour and a half. But just a reminder, anyone that has experiences, if you want to share them on the show or have them shared in the show, you can always reach out to me and either write them down and send them to me through email, um, salsidoparanormal@gmail.com, or through Discord. And if you want to be on a show at some point in the future and talk about your experiences, you can use those same ways to reach out to me. Give me sort of a brief outline of the types of activity you've had, and we can arrange to have you on the show at some point. So we'll do four more here, and then we'll stop. This one says this happened just a couple of months ago in August. Every summer, my sister, her husband, and their little girls come to stay with me for 3 months. It's become a tradition. The house feels alive when they're here. That day started like any other. I went to work early in the morning. Around 12:30 p.m., I got a message from my sister. Did you come home? I replied, no, I'm still at work. She texted me again. Don't lie. I told her, I swear, I haven't left work. That's when she went quiet for a moment, then said, okay, I'll tell you when you get home. When I finally came back around 5 p.m., she looked pale. She said that earlier she saw the light in my bedroom turned on. She called out my name, and someone answered from inside with my voice, saying, yeah, I'm coming. Wait for me. With my voice. Then she knocked on the door again, and my niece, the youngest, called out too. And once more, my voice replied, I'm coming, just a second. They waited for me to come out, but I never did. The light stayed on for a few minutes, then suddenly went off. When I got home and told them I'd been at work all day, no breaks, no early leave, my sister just stared at me, completely speechless. In our country, we hear stories about strange things happening, but never this close. Later that night, my niece asked me softly, Uncle, were you really here earlier? I didn't want to scare her, so I just smiled and said, yeah, I came and left. But deep down, I know whatever answered them from my room that day wasn't me. And that's where that one ends. Um, it's really odd how that happened. I'm wondering about that, and just I wonder about the whole multiverse things. Um, the idea of time, more so time especially, were they experiencing some kind of overlap with another point in time? Um, I also feel bad because I understand why the writer did that, why they told their niece that, yeah, it was them, and I get that they didn't want to freak the niece out, but also it's sad because I wish that it was easier for us all to sort of figure out how to approach this topic with kids. And some people are very good at it, but with kids and say and still stick to the actual what happened, but still not freak them out in staying true to what happened. So I yeah, kids understand better than we do. Dawn in the chat there says so. Yeah, the multiverse thing is fascinating, Pete. So, but yeah, so I don't know. It's but yeah, that's a possibility there with the multiverse and or with time anomalies and or a doppelganger of some kind that was sort of caught by the family showing up that day when they did. All those are possibilities. Let's get on to the next one here. This one says, I'm about to go to the gym all energetic, but then suddenly out of nowhere, I lost my keys. I swear I was holding them with my gym bag, then put them on the dinner table as I had the urge to use the restroom or bathroom before heading out. I know in my heart something paranormal is happening to me. I'm so frustrated. 2 hours later, I still haven't found my keys, and I no longer have the energy to go. That's a really short one, but it's an example of keys vanishing, objects vanishing. I hope that they reappear for the person. A lot of times they do. Once in a while they don't. And I always wonder about that too. Again, is it another one of those situations where the reality itself, there's a error, like an error or malfunction in it, and that's what happens, and that's why they vanish. Although I've heard that the other idea, that in some cases, when important objects like that vanish, that keep a person from going somewhere, it's because there's some event that some other consciousness, whether it's a loved one or a guardian spirit of some kind, some event, whether it's a tragic event or whatever it may be, that um, this other consciousness is trying to keep the the person away from, whether it's to save their life, all these different things. I don't know, and so yeah, that and see right there in the chat. Dawn says I've had the keys disappear, and it saved me from a pileup on the highway. So, again, to me, that hints at some kind of consciousness, whoever it is, I don't know, but something, someone out there. In some cases, because unfortunately it doesn't happen for everyone, but in some cases, some other consciousness being there um, to prevent a bad thing from happening to at least one person. So let's see here. We have two more left, and then we'll stop. And let me see here. Where? There we go. Okay, found my spot. This one says, I often find myself waking up at exactly 3:33 a.m., regardless of what time I go to bed, whether late or very early. In those moments, my heart races as if I had been running for miles, and I struggle to fall back asleep for up to an hour. My doctor advised me to cut down on coffee, but even though I only drink 1 cup a day, the problem persists. I've noticed that from time to time, my wife and our two young children, though not always all together, also wake up at exactly the same time, not a minute more or less, feeling restless. I know it may sound paranoid, but this time seems to have become almost a fixed appointment for our family. We live in an apartment in a recently built condominium with no previous owners. I've always been fascinated by paranormal topics, and this situation feels like it could belong to that realm. And it is odd. I wonder if there's something they're experiencing in their sleep and their dream state that is waking them up at that time. I don't know. Um, and I'm looking at the chat here. So Dawn says, search the whole home, and 15 minutes later, they were back on the hook. Yeah, and drove by the accident. That's fascinating. But yeah, so I don't know what's going on with this time with this family. Again, I wonder if it's something in the dream state that they're not remembering. Some event that's happening in their dreams, whether it's regular dreams or paranormal related dreams. I don't know, but I think that's possible given the that exact time and then the the way there's so many of them that wake up. I do, and part of what leads me to that is there's nothing else that seems to be happening as far as what they're saying. There's no other paranormal activity in their home. Uh, they don't mention that, so it makes me wonder if whatever is happening to them while they are sleeping, in some level of their consciousness there. Um, let's see. So one more left here, and then we'll stop for today. This one says, so my family and I, me, my mom, dad, grandma, and brother, were going back home after attending a funeral. On our way back, we were driving along a narrow, quiet road when we suddenly saw a man sitting right in the middle of it. He was dressed entirely in white. His legs were pulled close to his chest, and his face was buried in his knees, so we couldn't see who he was. My dad honked multiple times, thinking he'd move. He didn't. No reaction at all. Because the road was so narrow, my dad had to carefully steer the car just slightly to the side to pass him. As we drove past, I glanced at him. He was completely still, head down. But then, not even a few seconds later, when we turned to look back, he was gone. The road was empty, and there was nowhere nearby to run or hide that quickly. We were all wide awake, and we all saw him. And then he just wasn't there. That moment has stuck with me for years. I still don't know if it was a real person, a trick in our minds, or something paranormal. Um, and that's where that ends. It does seem like it could have been paranormal. I don't know. Maybe some kind of residual energy, especially since the man did not look at um, at them. So it's really odd. Um, I and then the way it vanished. So I have no idea. But there are so many roadside and or middle of the road encounters with all kinds of things. So looking at the chat here. Uh, let's see here. So Chef Pete says my wife couldn't find her power cord for her laptop. I looked for it and she looked for it. Found it an hour later in front of our face, and she was an hour late for work, but she missed a shooting a block from her work. Wow, that's fascinating. I'm glad that worked out for her. Um, yeah, yep. So, but that's all that we're gonna do for tonight. Thank you all for being here, and next recording will hopefully be Monday night, but there's supposed to be a maintenance event happening for the recording software I use. So there may not be a recording Monday, but if not, then definitely planning on Wednesday and go from there. Thank you all for listening and being here as much as you can. I got to put the command in here to get it to stop here when I want it to, because it's way too far to scroll up now to get back to the recording bot panel. Anyway, thank you all for being here and listening in, and I will talk to you all next time on Salsidoparanormal.